Hi everybody, this is the Grade 10 Theory Lesson Unit 12A, and today's topic is band instrument transposition. In 10B, we learn how to transpose by a specific interval, and band instrument transposition is basically the same concept, except instead of saying go up a major sixth or go up a perfect fifth, we're just simply going to be referring to an instrument, and your job will be to know what that transposition is for that specific instrument. And so instruments of the band are either transposing instruments or concert pitch instruments. What that means for musicians wanting to write music is that some instruments sound the pitch they read on the music, while others sound a different pitch. The instruments that read the notes they sound are called concert pitched instruments. And the other instruments are transposing because they read a transposition of their actual sound. As well as the transposition, instruments play in different clefs. And the use of clefs is varied and does not always indicate whether an instrument is a low voice or a high voice. For example, the bari sax is a bass instrument, but it reads in the treble clef. The reason for this is that all of the saxophones, by reading in the same clef, it makes it easy for a sax player to switch from the alto to the tenor or to the bari or soprano because they all read the same clef. So the first group we're going to look at are concert pitch instruments, and so these are the ones that there is no transposition for them. So the flute, the oboe, bassoon, trombone, euphonium, and tuba are all considered concert pitch. There might be some, again, variation a little bit with this in terms of the clefs that are used as well. So bassoon, bass clef primarily, but it can also do tenor. Trombone, bass primarily, but alto clef and tenor clef can be employed as well. And so transposing instruments in standard band instrumentation, you've noticed that all of the rest of the instruments that we have to do some kind of a transposition in order for us to play together. And so we go through from our highest pitched instrument, which is the piccolo, which is actually a transposing instrument. Even though it reads treble clef, and even though flute and piccolo music is often on the same part, the piccolo will sound an octave above what's written. So if it's playing something on the staff, it's going to sound above the staff when it actually goes to play. Clarinet, the trumpet or the cornet, and the flugelhorn, those are all considered B-flat instruments, and they read treble clef as well, but they sound basically a major second below what's written. The French horn is designated as the F French horn because it sounds a perfect fifth below what's written in pitch, concert pitch. Also reads in the treble clef. The alto clarinet and the alto sax are treble clef instruments. They sound a major sixth below. And we see some more B-flat instruments. However, this time we'll notice the bass clarinet, euphonium, and the tenor sax, they sound a major second below, but also we have to add an octave to that. So they actually sound a major ninth below what's written. As we move down, the bari sax, this one is also treble clef, but it sounds a major 13th below, which is also a major sixth like it was for the alto sax and the alto clarinet, except we also add an octave in this case, so we get the major 13th. By the way, when we add you might notice major 2 plus perfect eighth. Why does it equal 9? Because we ignore the upper octave, and we basically just treat that as a combination. It's contained within the interval. So major second plus the octave is the major ninth. And the last are the string bass and the guitar. The string bass is bass clef, and it sounds an octave below what's written. So basically the opposite of what the piccolo does at the very top is what takes place with the string bass below. And the guitar's treble clef also sounds an octave below what's written. Not very common, we see that in band instruments, but that's how it would work in this case. So how do we name our transpose instruments? So the C instruments read a C and they sound a C, therefore they're called C instruments. Your method books, in some cases, or music that we've been passing out over the years in concert band or wind orchestra, occasionally you would get a part and it would actually say C flute. And this is to differentiate between other flutes that do exist but haven't been used in a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, we're looking at this came across in our wind orchestra today. We're looking at an older score of the first Suite in E-flat Holst's piece of music, and there is actually a D-flat flute and D-flat piccolo part contained on that original score. And so again, not something but to differentiate between them. So C flutes, well, it's kind of a redundancy in today's standard instrumentation because we don't have those D-flat flutes anymore or piccolos. So basically we're just looking at flute. So a C flute, we know it's concert pitch, but technically it is a C instrument. B-flat instruments read a C and they sound a B-flat, so therefore they're called a B-flat instrument. E-flat instruments read a C, they sound an E-flat, so therefore they're called an E-flat. And F instruments read a C and they sound an F, so we call those F instruments. These names hold true even if the transposition is compounded with an added octave. So if we look at the B-flat instruments that are not compounded for a moment, this would be the trumpet and the clarinet. So non-compounding means it's not a compound interval. It's basically just less than an octave. So if we use C as an example, the pitch, so if a piano player plays that note and then asks a trumpet or a clarinet to play that same pitch, if they're reading the same part, the clarinet and the trumpet actually sound a major second below. Their instruments sound that in that concert B-flat, which is why they are called B-flat instruments. And what that means is that in order for them to play in unison, so if we want the clarinet and the trumpet to play in unison with the piano, because they sound a major second below, we need to rewrite their part so they actually sound a major second above. So if we scroll down here for a moment, again, they sound a major second below. We have to compensate for that. So concert pitch C is going to be meaning that they need to go up to a D. And now, when they play a D with a concert pitch C on the piano, they are in unison, which is what we need to be determining here. So the other instruments would be the same concept for their intervals as well. So when we are looking at writing or transposing parts, in this case we're going to look at a score or a chorale, we're going to be transposing this and assigning each instrument a specific part. And if you've never seen this above, this score writing, essentially there are 4 parts taking place here. So the upper voices have stems going in the upper direction in both the treble and the bass clef. And then we've got stems going down. So respectively, if we look from the very top to the very bottom, so stems up in the treble would be the soprano part, stems down in the treble clef would be the alto part, stems going up in the bass clef are the tenor voices, and then the stems going down in the bass clef are the bass voices. And so when it comes to expanding into separate instrumentation, like we're going to do, so this case we're looking at giving the trumpet, the alto sax, the French horn, and the trombone each a part taken from this score. And so simply all we've done in this case is just gone in that order. We've got our instruments labeled here on the left, 4 separate lines. So basically, again, we're just taking each of those voices and we're putting it on its own stave. And what you see is that we've got all of the parts and everything looks fine. We've got all of our indications, our time signatures, everything's in here. However, if you were to write out the parts in a non-transposed C score, it would look like we have above. But we notice it, and so we also notice brackets, bar lines, dynamics, everything's been adjusted, it looks fine. However, the instruments couldn't read this score and sound correct, because if you look over here, they're all playing in the same key. And we know that that's an issue, as we just learned in our piano or clarinet trumpet example. And so now we need to deal with that. We have to fix the transpositions if we want to play this piece and for it to sound good, because if we were to play this right now, it would sound terrible. So we got to fix this. So how are we going to do that? Well, again, we're going to keep the instrumentation the same, but we're going to accommodate what needs to take place. So the trumpet in B-flat, I'm going to try and flip back and forth between these two. Well, we know it's a B-flat instrument, and we know B-flat instruments sound a major second below concert pitch. So if the original part, in this case, and we determine it to be F major, because we don't have any accidentals that are not in the key signature, and if we look at the first, we count up all of these notes, or just simply analyze the first couple of notes here, we have an F, an A, a C, and an F, which is an F major triad, and then down here at the end, F, C, A, and F again. So again, it's an F major triad in both of these cases. So we're dealing with the tonality of F major. So for an F major, that means the trumpet, in order to sound in unison, or to sound like it's going to match what needs to be played with the rest of these instruments in concert pitch is F major, which means the trumpet needs to go up a major second to compensate. So that actually means the trumpet is going to be rewritten into the key of G major, which means every note that was here originally needs to go up 1 step. So instead of having F as the first note, trumpet starting pitch is going to be a G. Second note, instead of a G here, it's going to be an A. So everything gets bumped up a major second, and make sure you change the key. And then we're good. We've got the trumpet again being able to play with the rest of these instruments. The alto saxophone part, again, we're in concert F major. It's an E-flat instrument. E-flat instruments sound a major 6 below, which means we need to rewrite them up a major 6th. So if we're in the key of F major, that means we have to go up to the 6th note of F major, a major 6th above the note F, which gives us the note D. which is why the alto part is written in the key of D major. And instead of starting on a C, which is the fifth of F major, we're going to be starting on an A, which is the fifth of D major. And all of the other notes are going to go up a sixth as well, rather. Or a fifth relative to the key, I should say. The horn part is in F. It's a horn in F part, and it sounds a perfect fifth below, which means we've got to bring it up a fifth above. So instead of being in the key of F major, it's going to be rewritten to the key of C major. So C being the fifth note of F, and then we need to adjust all of the notes up perfect fifth as well. So instead of starting on an A in this case, and actually also we notice this isn't a mistake because the horn actually reads treble clef. So originally when we wrote this out, the clef also needs to change. And so here we've adjusted for that as well. The only instrument out of the four that we didn't have to worry about was the trombone, because it's a C instrument. So it's the only C instrument in this example. So trombone and the bass clef, it's going to remain in the key of F major in both cases. And it's just going to be the exact same thing as was on the bottom of this chorale, just copied out on its own line. And so the very last thing we would do is to extrapolate this score and give each instrument its own part, adjusting the stems if necessary, adding any other pieces of information such as fermatas, crescendos, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's do an example together. Now it says here the very first, at the top, it says you must memorize the normal concert band instrument transposition for all tests. Well, there are no tests to worry about, but we should still know what's taking place with the transposition and which instruments are which. Now, in these examples, we're always going to tell you, E flat. You'll notice B flat, E flat, and this is again something you've probably seen before, never really thought about. And so now for the clarinet example, we still need to designate, because there are different clarinets. There are clarinets which read in A. So we need to be specific when we're identifying these. So let's go through. We'll do one of these examples. Maybe I'll just do the first bar. We're going to transpose the following example for the instruments that are listed. So we've got this piece of music. Our first step, just like our other interval questions, is to determine what the key is. For flats, we could be in F major, or we could be in A flat major, or we could be in the key of F minor. And then we look at our pitches, and we notice there's accidentals in here. So if if we're in F minor, raise 6 and 7ths, definitely raise 7ths. So we should be seeing E naturals. I'm not seeing any E naturals here. Our last note in the key in this piece is ending on a concert A flat, which is a pretty strong indicator. Again, these raised or altered pitches, they're not. They're just really passing tones, and they're not actually defining a minor tonality or highlighting a minor tonality. So we're going to go with concert A flat major in this case. So can make a little note of that here. Help us out as we go. And we need to first write this part for the oboe. So I'm going to refer back to my original part of my guide and have to look, is the oboe. First question is it a concert pitch instrument or is it a transposing instrument? And I see it up here in concert pitch, and it reads treble clef, and it's non-transposing, which means I'm basically, if I look at everything here, treble clef, oboe, treble clef, non-transposing. I'm copying out this exact same part for the oboe in this first example. I'm not going to do that. That's pretty easy, but that's what's taking place. You have to do that. But if we move on to the next example, it says write this out for the flute. However, we've got some more information, because flute, again, if I look back to my chart, flute is non-transposing, and it's treble clef as well. So that means I'm basically going to be copying this out again, except over here it says write this an octave and the A is above. So basically we're going to be taking, instead of starting on this low E flat, it's going to go up here to the upper E flat. That's what this means. Everything else will be the same. Same accidentals, it's just pushed up the octave. Flutes can play down in this register. It's not very common, and so it's much more preferable to have this written up an octave higher. Let's look at one that we actually do have to transpose, and this would be the clarinet. So clarinet, go back to our chart here for a moment, determine is this transposing or non, and it is transposing. The clarinet, it's treble clef, but it sounds a major second below the written pitch. So clarinet, first step is to write our clef. So draw our treble clef. And we know that the clarinet's a B flat instrument, and it sounds a major second below concert pitch. So we've determined that this key is the concert key of A flat major, which means if we go a major second above an A flat with our interval, we arrive to the note B flat, which means our new key is going to be B flat major. Add our rest of our information here. We have our time signature. And so now what that means, because I've adjusted for my key, basically all of these notes need to move up a major second. And so instead of starting on an E flat, the first note in the clarinet part is going to be an F, and then we've got a G, and those are both eighth notes, and then we have a C, which now is going to become a D. So everything gets bumped up that major second. Our next note, we've got a B natural, concert B natural, which means we need to go up a major second, which means we've got to make it into a C sharp in this case, and then we've got a C, going back here for a moment, B flat, which going up a major second would give us a C natural. So this one is what we've got here, and then we're back instead of an A. Again, we're going to be up at the B flat as well. Okay, so there's the first bar done for the clarinet part. All right, so that's what that one's going to look like, and you can fill in the rest. So basically, everything gets bumped up that major second. Okay, if I go into, and the rest of, so again, I won't do these rest here, but you'll notice that there is one more here that is basically not going to require a whole lot of extra work as well. So let's look at some other ones here. So you'll notice right now, we are in the bass clef, new piece of music, new key signature. We've got some accidentals here. So again, our first step is always determining, is this a major or a minor key? And we see some accidentals in here, which again should raise some flags and have us, anticipating we might be dealing with a minor tonality. So if the key signature that has two sharps could either be D major or it could be B minor. And so if it's, for a moment, we assume we're in the key of B minor, we should be seeing G sharps and A sharps. A sharps for sure. Hey, look at that. We have a G sharp, we have an A sharp, B, keep going through your F sharp. They're diatonic. This note is at least. Last note's a B. Well, we're ending on a B, and we've got raised 6 and 7. So we're going to go with this as being in the key of B minor. Okay, so I'm going to make a note of that. We've determined our key, so now we're just going to have to go through and write the parts for these instruments. So the trombone, well, that's the first on our list. If we go back for a moment, transposing or non, it's non-transposing. There's the trombone part there. It reads bass clef. And this is in the bass. So again, this is an example. You're just going to be copying out this first part. The bass clarinet is a transposing instrument. And you'll start to recognize which ones are and aren't, because the ones that are non-transposing don't have a letter in front of them. Remember C. We could include C, but it's kind of redundant. It's just simpler to just omit it and not use it. And then these other ones are actually referring to specific pitches. So let's write this one. Actually, let's do this one down here, the bari sax, because this one's going to be the one instrument that actually transposes by the greatest distance. So I'm going to go ahead and write this for the B flat, or the E flat bari sax. Now I know bari sax, going back to this first sheet again, on my list, it's a treble clef instrument, and the reason for that is that all the saxophones can be reading from the same clef. So first step is to write our treble clef for the bari sax. The next step is determining the transposition, and this is where major and minor tonalities, just like we did with our last unit, have no bearing on the actual interval. Okay, so the bari sax, it is an E flat instrument, which means it sounds a major sixth below at its core, or at its fundamental element of what we're going to be analyzing here. So it's a major sixth below, and it's an octave as well, which means we need to move it up a major 13th. So let's focus on the major sixth aspect for a moment. The major sixth is in reference to this note B. We're going to ignore for a moment that it's the key of B minor and assume, like we have in our other interval questions, our benchmark as being a major tonality, which means we're going up a major sixth above the note B natural, as in B major. So what's the sixth note? B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp would be our sixth note, which means, and then once we've determined what the actual note is, so B major sixth above B is a G sharp, now we add back the minor aspect. So our new key transposed for bari sax is the key of G sharp minor, which has 5 sharps just like B major does. Okay, so that's our new key. That's very important we've established that. The next thing we need to do is figure out which is going to be our starting pitch. Well, instead of starting on F sharp in the bass clef, I know that I've got to go up a major sixth. So a major sixth above an F sharp is the note D sharp. And then from there, I need to bring it up a full octave above that. So if I, again, and this is where going from different clefs, it's important we remember where middle C is located, right? So if I bring this note up a full octave, that F sharp, it's actually going to bring it down here onto that first space, right? If we remember middle C's down here and that starting pitch is down here. So if I bring it up an octave, it's starting on this F. If I bring it up, an octave, but I still got to go up that major sixth, right? Which means I'm actually going to be starting here on this note. And then from there, I'm going to simply be going through and adjusting all of my other notes if I need to, dependent on what the original notes were. So first note is going to be that D sharp. I've got to go up and raise this one again, so this one's going to become, nope, sorry, I'm not going to be an E double sharp. And that one, it's just going to be an E sharp for this one. This one will be an F double sharp, and then we've got our G sharp on the top. So our first couple of notes, we've got this, and then so I'll just go ahead and fill these ones in. And there we have it. So there's the first line, the first part of the Barry sax part with this transposition. So that's what it looks like, a major 13th above what was in the bass clef. So again, always double check when we're doing these what the original key is, just like we were in 10B, and then knowing what the transposition is. So really you can see that there's only really 4 categories or types of transposition, and then some of them are compounded as well, just to make notes. But basically C, there's a B flat, there's a B flat, there's an E flat. French horn is an F part, right? And actually this one doesn't designate. Sometimes the F horn, but in this case it's just French horn. It's the only one that is has that pitch of F. Okay, so you can go ahead and do the rest of these. And those are the steps just as we did in 10B. Look at the interval, and again, remember if it's in a minor key, it's not going to have any bearing on the actual interval itself. Determine what that note, assume you're in a major key for a moment, like we did in this question. Major 6th above a B is a G sharp, and then go back. Okay, now it's instead of G sharp major, G sharp minor. Remember, G sharp major doesn't exist anyway, so that's what's taking place there. Thanks, everybody. That's it for 12A, and we'll see you for our very last lesson on 12B.